Thank you for being here. On behalf of Brandon Area Realtors, we're here with Jeff Fawcett, mayoral candidate for the City of Brandon 2022. We have a few questions we want to ask you in relation to the upcoming election. Regarding the downtown, many Canadian cities have seen successful revitalization of their downtowns, becoming tourist destinations. We've had countless studies done on it, but it's time to actually do something. What would your plan be to bring business and people back downtown?
Yeah, good question, and it is common across the whole country. At Brandon, we have a bit better opportunity just simply by the size, and we have a couple of main blocks to work on. People have a very different perception of Rosser Avenue and Princess Avenue. They seem to be worried about going into the entrance of the library, and yet hundreds and hundreds of people and children go into the entrance of the YMCA 1 block away. So perceptions are one of our real big issues. Of course, COVID really did hurt us, and across the country. Partly because the income base of a lot of our staff that work downtown is very high. We have our law firms, we have our courthouses, we have our big accounting companies, we have medical, the banks. And most of them went home for 2 years. And so we kind of lost our audience. So in the next little while, one of the things we want to do is really work with our entrepreneurs, really work with our college, university, and get our entrepreneurial spirit going in there again. We have a lot of places that have been starting up. If I had a request of the real estate board, it would be over the last decade or so, if all those different places that looked at downtown, if we actually put them in there, how much different would we have? Because we do sometimes find that we pull ourselves out of downtown. Like, we are our own worst enemies. People come looking for a spot that they think is really nice, that they think is kind of quaint and cute, and they want to work there. And it's like, we tell them not to. But economy of scale, the more we need, the better we can do. Couple big factors is, lots of social service work going on right now, and we know that's an issue. So we're going to try to address a lot of those things with our partners. The city itself is looking with the province to put money into the library, which is the only building we really own in the core. So we can't sort of pick up and abandon it, because I think that statement is much worse than putting something into it and trying to make it work better. And we have at least 4 proposals on that 10th Street Strand property just down the road from here. So I haven't had a chance to see those proposals yet, but when they do come, like there's 4 that's in there, and we were looking at a minimum of a 3-story, 2 floors of at-rate rent for places, and then commercial on the bottom. That makes a big difference. And we have to work well with the people that do own some of those properties down there. The fellow that owns 10th Street takes a lot of pride in it, the 100 block on 10th. We need to work more with them. And we need to figure out how we can deal with these properties that are owned by people outside the city that don't seem to want to do much with them. And our hands are kind of tied them ourselves, because they pay their taxes. And we're trying to figure out how do we do that. So,
can there be incentives put into place for a business to open or create there, versus if we just go straight rent from 18th Street, let's say, to Rosser? Can there be more incentives so that this owner would open up his doors to leasing out some space or opening up a business? Can there be incentives to drive business down there?
Yeah. We do want to look at all those kind of options. And so with our BDDC, business development downtown, we'll try to help continue to work on those sort of things that incentivize. Like, we're doing 2 different things at the same time. We'd like to incentivize to put things in, and we're putting in disincentives for people that don't put things in or are boarded, or so their taxes are increased, and they, over time we want it to be a big enough deterrent that they kind of think it's no point just paying taxes on these anymore, we should sell them. So there's a lot of factors in the downtown, but I really do believe collectively, between our entrepreneurial spirit, which we've had, the real estate, working with us down there, and kind of incentivizing a few things. We do have an opportunity to make it a lot better space, and the arts and all that play a role as well.
How would you implement a plan that could be extended past the 4-year mandate of a sitting government? Because every 4 years we have new leadership in there, and if you put something in now, how do we do something that, because this is a long-term plan, you don't fix downtown in less than 4 years.
No, you don't. Although I will say we don't have as far to go as I think some people realize. Like we retracted about a decade over COVID. Like we were moving in a not bad direction. And it really hurt us. It really hurt us when you take all that population off the street and just leave, people that didn't have work to leave or anywhere to go like that. It just changes the dynamic, and it was really noticeable. The other thing on our council, and this is sort of an internal thing, and it's good to talk about these kind of things, is historically management is the long-term vision, and councils are often thought of as this short for term. But that being said, I've been on 12 years and had 2 mayors in 12 years, and I believe, including acting, 5 city managers. So the long-term vision has been on the council for the last while. So most of the things we're doing goes past the council, and that always is going to be the case. There's the odd little wins, but most of these things, the pace of it, you know how that works. It's not fast. Even a wastewater, our water treatment plant, which was essential, it's a decade in the works. Yeah. So, but we do need, I think, in the next year or two, some what I would call big wins. We need to see some substantial change. But you're absolutely right. It is a long term, and I do think that, a college and a university can play a bit of a role in helping us.
We've seen, this is maybe a little more personal to me, and maybe not so much off the board, but we've seen some cities that'll try and make a tourist destination just quick. What's your thoughts on turning Rosser into pedestrian, closing it to street? We did that briefly a few years ago. I personally like that idea to create a hub downtown with entertainment.
Yeah.
And what's your quick thoughts on that?
In theory, I actually do like it. And there may be some places to look at, for example, but we need to do a little bit more homework than we did that first time. We kind of hammered that in there. I was on the council at the time. It wasn't as planned out as it should have been, and it was abrupt. And we need to get out on the street. There's nothing better than when they have the car night downtown and you're wandering around there, as alive as can be, and everybody's walking around when we have our festivals, which should return. Again, same thing, we weren't able to do anything in Princess Park for a number of years. We weren't able to do some of these festivals that the university and college used to put on, which we will try to drive them to again, because us that are a little bit older than university age still like to do those things as well. But say, for example, 10th Street, that 100 block. Depending on what is going in across the street there, we would maybe talk with those residents. Maybe that closes and it allows for people to be on the street. Seasonally, maybe pieces of Rosser, but we have to plan out, and there has to be a reason, because when we did that, in theory, we want people to be out on the street so that the storefronts can bring their stuff out, but the bank had no reason to bring anything out, and the clothing store are kind of a little less so, although we could use more local clothing stores downtown. We should incentivize that.
Yeah.
So I do like it in theory. So it is something that I think we could look at, because I do agree we need entertainment district is important in a place that is the population we do of students should have some kind of entertainment district.
Changing gears a bit here, industrial development. Attracting new industry is a key to a city's growth and sustainability. We have seen companies choose to build in other communities rather than Brandon due to more readily available land and opportunities. What is your plan to make Brandon a viable option for industrial expansion? Yeah,
that's a great question, because it's really, really important. And there's 2 different things that I'd like to see us do. One is sort of revisit and recreate our economic development. We have an internal staff that does economic development, which a lot of communities our size and smaller do. But as you get larger, you see they have those extensions, like the Yes Winnipegs and the things like that. Winnipeg's a lot bigger, but because we need to have sort of the business, industrial, like large industry community involved in recruiting business. Like they're the ones that are out there all the time. They speak a language other business people understand, and we do need our bureaucrats to help seal deals or, dot the I's, cross the T's. But we do know that business to business is a good way to have a conversation. And the best business advocates for our region is the ones that are here. So that's one piece on recruitment. But the other one is we do need to figure out how to service the industrial lands better, because that is one of the biggest issues we have is there's not a lot of difference between industrial lands inside the city and outside the city right now because we're not serviced, and that would make a big difference. And you get more bang for your buck. We are getting services out closer to there, but as you know, we've got a lot of big dollars going out towards services all over the place. But we do want to get them out there. It does make a difference. The industrial park is not included in the development cost charges, like to try to incentivize. They don't pay that additional because the long-term impact of having large industry is really important. Yeah. So yeah, we want to recruit aggressively. Portage has taken a hard lead on us, and we gotta get on them.
We didn't want to drop names here, but
no. It was noted though.
Yeah. Having healthy reserve funds for acquiring and servicing industrial lands is an important piece. What do you believe the city should commit to regarding annual appropriation to these reserves?
We need to really watch our reserve funds. It's just like, putting money in the bank for later. To keep taxes low on a lot of cases, we have gone into our reserves. Not as much in the last number of years as there was a time. And then again, some will make that argument as well, pay now or pay later. It depends on how you want to look at it. I've always kind of in theory liked the idea of having some money put away for something so it isn't all borrowed. But there is always discussion on that. But we do have the reserves for that. We will keep building them. And we need to really make sure we do have a plan for the industrial park. Again, unlike some cities, we own a little bit of land out in the industrial park, but we really don't own much. So it's privately held. So that's what the other thing is, getting that larger group of business industry people collectively working. They get all on the same page because they need to do a little work for themselves, and they need to help us to do that, because we can't openly sell stuff for private property. Yeah. We have to put people together, so that's the important thing.
Okay, we're going to finish off with recreation. What are your plans for recreational facilities going forward? We've talked about one of the big discussions is Park Community Center. It's been in the news a lot, and then the Sportsplex is always in the news.
Yeah. So the big recreation-wise, biggest thing is of course the outdoor sports complex, which is financially been put together with ourselves, the feds, and the province. So that is going to begin.
That's the one on
Veterans Way. Yeah. Which, if you go over all our maps and everything like that, doesn't flood.
Yeah. I live right near that.
Yes. So it's really, really going to be good, and then that opens up the old fields to some other recreation that will be allowed to be flooded, because it does now regularly flood after 40 some years of not ever being flooded. But that's a big deal. So that's going to serve a lot of things. We're looking at additional tennis courts out there, which would be pickleball courts as well, cricket fields, soccer fields, all kinds of things happening out that way. So that's exciting. The Sportsplex is going to get a good revisiting, like a real good revisiting. In the next short term, we'll get our tenders back for the concession in there, which is finally going to be going back to private, which can help itself. But we need a good revisiting of the sportsplex. For myself, you know, I like what we did with the golf course. You know, it's a city-owned golf course. We still contribute to it. We make sure it's looking great. We have a management team in there that really does a good job. Like, it's what they do. Do we need people in the sportsplex that run facilities like that independently of the city? I think it's something we'll look at for sure. And we're going to take a really good, hard look at the sportsplex. And then, you know, we're going to continue to work on our walking paths out through the city. Maybe be looking at trying to get some kind of washrooms along some of them. We want to do all kinds of connectivity. We'll also look across the city at how we can connect. I know that a lot of people talk about cycling. I ride my bike all the time. I don't have a big issue with it. I just ride it and go to where I need to go and get off. But we can make it better. Like, admittedly, I'm breaking the rules. Sometimes I'm riding on the sidewalk. I'm doing whatever. But we need to take a look at that. And I'm a big fan of being outdoors and being active. So we'll be pushing that.
The outdoor water park?
Big budget. Big budget. Worth a discussion. It's been sitting around forever. One of the downsides of it, which again I think it would be great for our local community, but as the regional hub, you know, I would hate the idea that, you know, Souris, Maleta, and all these other communities have gathered themselves together, funded, and put these things in that we go and take part in, and we would cannibalize those. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't look at it and do it, but, you know, as a regional hub and as a neighbor,
team player,
as a neighbor, like what are other things that we could do that would enhance things and not take away from our neighbors as much.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's big dollars attached to that, which we've never really looked at, but it's spoke about. People talk about it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time and doing this with us.
Well, I appreciate it a great deal.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. On behalf of Brandon Area Realtors, we're here with Elliot Olison, mayoral candidate for the City of Brandon 2022. We have a few questions we want to ask you in relation to the upcoming election. On the downtown, many Canadian cities have seen successful revitalization of their downtowns becoming tourist destinations. We've had countless studies done on it, but it's time to actually do something. What would your plan be to bring business and people back downtown?
Well, I think a large part of the problem with the downtown and Brandon in general is there's very much a visible air of neglect. And people don't want to go and hang out in an area that looks like it's neglected. Now that includes things like shop fronts that have the peeling paint and such like that. But more importantly, it includes things like abandoned buildings that are left to rot and have squatters, and they're a blight on neighborhoods, and frankly they steal from the residents of the neighborhoods in terms of their property values and the times it takes them to resell. People coming to Brandon to visit and potentially move here and invest, they see these things and they see that nothing's done about them. Why is this allowed to be? Is this a place I really trust to grow with me? So I think what we need to do is we need to address the blight of abandoned and ignored buildings and lots downtown. I personally am of the opinion that in many cases these things have been like this for years and years on end, with no evidence of desire to do anything about it on the part of the property owners. In that case, since you're costing the city and its residents, it's in the city's best interest to annex it and put it to meaningful use. We have a housing crisis in Brandon. We need housing. I see no reason why the city shouldn't be willing to take the land, invest in building social housing, and then, as an idea, we have a number of nonprofits in the downtown that work directly with the community that causes a lot of concern for the average citizen. Well, why don't we give them that building that they can run as a permanent source of revenue? They don't have to constantly be going after grants. They don't have to constantly be guessing, can we afford this next year? Can we not? They have stable, reliable funding, and they're able to work directly with the community in a more direct, well, direct isn't really the right word there, but you get what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is just a difference in emphasis. The emphasis the city has always put is making certain to keep property taxes at the rock bottom and expand outward. Well, that hasn't worked, unfortunately. It's worked for certain groups and certain people. It's worked very, very well for a small fraction. Brandon hasn't benefited. So we need to put the emphasis on Brandon, not on image, but on substance.
How would you implement a plan that could be extended past the 4-year mandate of a sitting government? You know, every 4 years we have new leadership coming in. How do we put something in place that, like, a downtown isn't fixed in a couple of years? This is takes a project and a commitment. What kind of a plan we put in that the next mayor will follow or the next councillors will follow?
Well, the obvious answer is make sure to re-elect me. Seriously, I believe that a good idea and good policy is its own best advocate. After 4 years, there will be recognizable and measurable results. You will see difference. One of the things that, as far as the downtown goes, and I've been very upfront about this, is that decayed Esso on Rosser Avenue. Okay, somebody comes downtown, they're thinking about moving here, they see a parking lot full of pigeon feces with scattered pigeon carcasses, some of which, incidentally, we pay to contribute, because we send bylaw officers down there with pellet guns to hunt the pigeons that are attracted to this decrepit property. Fun stuff. People see that, and they know that that indicates there's something wrong. So you fix these things, and that starts the ball rolling. People see the difference. People are more willing to come downtown. What do we have downtown to attract people, right? We've got some small businesses, some of which are very, very good, but they're struggling. Okay. We need to invest in the small Brandon-based businesses. We invest in the great, big, very successful, already incredibly rich ones, and we leave the little ones to kind of fend for themselves. Well, the big ones are successful. They don't need our help. It's the little ones we need to support, and it's the little ones that give neighborhoods and areas character, and it's the character that brings people down.
So tax breaks for a person, that maybe business tax or property tax breaks for someone that's willing to go downtown?
That's something that would have to be considered. I'm not necessarily a cut-to-the-bone tax type of person because the numbers tell me that that's just a really dumb way to proceed. I'm going by numbers that Rick Crest provided to the Brandon Sun in, I believe it was 2020, when he gave the 1% property tax decrease on the back of COVID funding. He said that this will save the average Brandonite $19 that year. Okay, well, what's $19 to the average Brandon? It's spread out over a year. It's a McDonald's coffee. Thank you very much, man. You know, but that money put to downtown revitalization, put to the beginnings of a funding framework for, say, a downtown festival. That money could have gone to many productive things that would have helped with our recovery. Instead, we bought the average Brandonite a cup of coffee a month and said, hey, good job. I believe that people don't like taxes when taxes are spent on dumb stuff. I believe that people are willing to pay for things that they receive. So I don't think that there's a problem with saying, yes, your property taxes are likely to go up a little bit, but on the back of it, you're going to be saving on wear and tear on your vehicles because we're going to fix your roads. And when people come to Brandon and they see the city, they're not going to be seeing it by bouncing their head off the top of their car. That's what makes people invest. It's not a whole bunch of empty land. It's not a whole bunch of, we've got this much land. It's not build it, they will come. It's give them a reason to want to be here and they will happily invest. And we haven't done that. We've just gone with the, well, if we've got a lot of land, People will use it.
How do we get them to buy that?
I think it sells itself.
Okay.
Like, I really do. I don't think that it's really a hard sell. And especially when you back it up against the actual numbers. I mean, we've seen the results of the field of dreams approach, okay? Our operating budget has not increased in keeping with inflation. We're actually 2% down in real numbers over the last 5 years. If you take out of it the $4.5 million that we got as a one-time grant from the province because they offloaded the holding cells for detained individuals onto the city, the cost of that has spiked, so the province is thrown in so that we can afford it without having to jack up the cost to Brandonites. That's a one-time thing. You take that out of our operating budget because it's not going to be there next year.
Yeah.
And we're at about 15%, which puts us 5% behind inflation over the course of the last 5 years. At the same time, now this is going to blow your mind, I bet. In percentage terms, how much has Brandon's geographic footprint expanded in the last 5 years, since 2016?
Yeah.
Take a guess, percentage terms.
I wouldn't know that.
Do you think it's north or south of 50?
I don't think it'd be south of 50% that the footprint has been expanded, probably, but I don't know.
Okay. You can check me on this. StatsCan, 2016 census, and then 2021 data. And the 2021 numbers are used all over the place.
Yeah,
Wikipedia, Brandon Tourism. 280%.
The footprint in 5
Our
years?
land area has gone from roughly 28 square kilometers to 79. That's 280%. At the same time, our operating budget has effectively declined.
Yeah.
So the numbers
You can't
themselves
service
say
that, yeah.
this does not work.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we're already suffering crumbling roads. We can't keep up with infrastructure. Our children in areas of the city are drinking lead. And we're adding to our infrastructure burden hither and yon.
Yeah.
So all that's going to do is increase the ongoing expense to the city, increase the appearance of neglect, increase the degradation of the roads.
Yeah.
If we follow a path that's already shown to lead to thorns, we deserve to bleed. I mean, really.
Yeah. So coming back, just this is a bit of a pet one for me personally, a little bit on the downtown thing. I've often, when other cities I've been to, they have little tourist hubs or entertainment districts. What are your thoughts on closing Rosser to a pedestrian walkway or something like that?
You know, I have thought of that. And I'm not really heavy one way or the other.
Yeah. No, that's fair enough.
Like I think about, I think it's Stevens Avenue in Calgary, right? Which is a huge area that's all blocked off.
Yeah.
But they started off with a relatively wide street and wide sidewalks. Rosser doesn't really have that width so much, but then we're not the size of Calgary, right?
Yeah.
I think it's definitely something that I'd be into because I think it's a wonderful thing. And anything that cuts down on greenhouse gases that the city emits, I'm for, which is another reason why outward expansion doesn't work. The city says we want to be environmentally friendly, so let's increase the amount of emissions as opposed to concentrating, right?
Yeah. Okay, changing gears a bit here into industrial development. Attracting new industry is key to a city's growth and sustainability, bringing jobs and such to town. We have seen companies choose to build in other communities rather than Brandon due to more readily available land and opportunities. What would your plan be to make Brandon a more viable option for industrial expansion?
Well, I object to I don't object, but I disagree with one of the premises in the question.
Yep.
And that is that it's availability of land that attracts investment. I think I've just demonstrated that having available land doesn't increase the investment that significantly. When people are investing in a community, when they're bringing their industry there, they're planning on settling, okay? They want a workforce that's educated and that's reasonably well trained and in constant supply, but they also want a good quality of living for their management and the people that they're bringing in. if the people see that Brandon lacks the character, the amenities, the sense of community, the decent roads, the activities, then they're really going to ask themselves, do I want to spend the next 3-4 years here? Do I want to spend the time to invest here? When there's this community down the road that'll do almost as good a job in most areas, but much better in these areas. Quality of life, livability, that's something that nobody ever factors into these things, because once you factor it in, a lot of the current calculus ceases to make sense. So I disagree that it's a matter of land availability.
Yeah.
I think it's a matter of giving Brandonites reason to take pride in Brandon again, and giving Brandonites a reason to feel that they're Brandonites. They're not taxpayers. They're not ratepayers or stakeholders. They are Brandonites. They are citizens. They are a part of this living, breathing organism that is our city. And I don't believe they've been treated like that. And I think that once we start treating Brandonites like that, we will see that pride grow. We will see that air of neglect start to recede. And that's when we'll see people being more willing and more enthusiastic to invest. It's my own personal opinion.
No, that's what we're looking for. Just to finish off with recreation here, we've had a lot of conversation in the last few years with Sportsplex, like what should be done, and it seems like it's always under construction. And then there's also the Park Community Center has been a buzzword. What are your thoughts on those two facilities, or what should be done in relation to what they bring to the city?
I have warm memories of Park Community Center. I think community centers in general need to be supported by the city. I remember when they were a flourishing thing, and they provided a valuable resource. It was a community meeting place. It was a place where people would go and hang out. Their kids would be playing and the parents would talk, right? It gave you a sense of connection that we don't have anymore. So I'm a great fan of community centers, and I think they should be supported. The Sportsplex, it's another one that I'm not 100% on, because I have thoughts on it, but I don't know how well informed those thoughts are. It seems to me that we're constantly throwing a whole lot of money at it to never have it open or functional. And if that's all we're going to do, then we need to cut our losses and accept that an old building, an old facility is old. But we can't do that without an eye to providing a replacement for it, because then we gut recreation in the North End. We've already isolated the North End from the rest of Brandon via destroying the 8th Street Bridge. Take out their recreation center facility, and you've left them dependent entirely on Brandon Transit to get to anything, and that's kind of a merciless fate, frankly. You know, so I'm on the fence on the Sportsplex itself, because I really don't know deeply enough about it. But it would need to be replaced with something, because the North End needs a facility.
And it's shown that we need the ice, like with the new rink that's been built and it's still busy. We still need skating facilities for kids. And what are your thoughts on building an outdoor water park? Like, we see people leaving Brandon to go to Cirrus Wawaniisa. Is that something Brandon should be looking into?
A water park in and of itself, sure, why not? Some other attraction, sure, why not? I know the lady that put together the idea of the water park. I don't know her proposal terribly well, because it wasn't something that really interested me that much. It's like, okay, you look like you're running with it, everything's great, woo. The idea of it, great. We need an attraction. We need something that will bring people here. And if it's a water park, I'm fine with it. I'd rather it not be a giant Cheeto. I think it was a town in Alberta just did that. I'd rather it not be something like that. But if it's a water park, great. If it's something else, great. But we need something to distinguish Brandon and to bring people here. So I'm fond of the idea of it in principle.
Okay, I think that does it. Thank you for taking the time to meet with us and answer a few questions, and
Sure.
appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Good luck.
It was a pleasure, man.
You bet.